Hello, nonprofit leaders. I'm Sarah Olivieri, your host, and this podcast is here to assist people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders make a bigger impact with insights, tips, and lessons learned from nonprofit leaders and experts. Having been an executive director, a board member, and now a consultant and coach, I truly understand the challenges you face. And that's why I'm here. I'm all about working smarter, not harder, so you can make a bigger impact without the burnout. And so is our sponsor, DonorBox. DonorBox isn't just a suite of helpful fundraising tools, it's a partner that helps you raise more money and supports you in retaining your donors. I love their forward-thinking approach. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. And don't forget to sign up for the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter, where you'll get bite-sized, actionable tips just for nonprofit leaders like you, delivered weekly to your inbox. Sign up at inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. My guest for this episode is Roz Zavras, who is an experienced nonprofit operations expert with 20 years of experience building operational and technical infrastructure for global and local social impact organizations. She has a talent for identifying systemic challenges and designing new tools to overcome them. And that's partly what we're going to talk about today. She has been involved in revamping cash-based accounting systems in East Africa, a place dear to my heart, to creating a grant and donor tracking system for city-based community foundation. Roz has a proven track record in finding solutions in a wide range of operational challenges, and she has a master's in law and diplomacy, as well as a bachelor's in economics and mathematics, and advanced work in accounting, technology, and fundraising. Roz brings an equity-focused, multidisciplinary approach to her work. Welcome, Roz. It's such a pleasure to have you. Before we dive into things nonprofit, tech strategy, and operations, would you tell us a little bit about yourself personally?
Of course. And thank you for having me. Well, the thing that is hyper present for me right now is I'm moving. We actually found our dream home. I live outside of New Haven, Connecticut with my son and my husband, a turtle, a dog, and a cat. And I'm welcoming my mother to come live with us as well. So finding a home that fits all of us has been such a challenge. And we found a home where the backyard is a nature preserve. And there's even a little pond out back. So the turtle will have a summer home. He won't be outside in Connecticut winters.
I love it. Oh, that I can really identify. I'm sure a lot of folks can with a lot of those dynamics, whether they have one, some, or all. Well, congratulations
Thank
on
you.
your home. That's exciting. How soon till your move?
We close next week. So next
Well,
week.
well, that is exciting. And moving is always also an operational, stressful challenge.
Exactly. It's always interesting, right? The doctor's kids are the sickest on the block. So I would say,
Uh-huh.
don't look at my move right now if you were to look at my home.
I love it. Well, let's talk nonprofits. And you have kind of broad experience in strategy, operations, and tech. So frame it up for us. Like, where do you see, especially these days, kind of how does technology fit into the conversation around strategy and operations? Let's start there.
Well, technology these days is woven into everything that we do, right? You know, years ago, you could say technology was in a silo, but when we talk about strategy and when we talk about growth and expanding programs, one of the biggest things we start to ask ourselves is, okay, are the tools that we're using the appropriate tools to facilitate that growth or expansion? Right. I'm in the middle of a conversation with one client right now, and they're thinking about how do we communicate with our community, and a part of that is the technology we're using to communicate. So not only do
Yeah.
we have to build a communication strategy, but there needs to be a technology strategy component to that, because if the tech doesn't support what you want to do, then
Yeah.
we have to think of a new way. So it's a part of all aspects of nonprofit life now.
Yeah. And as you work with organizations these days, what kind of resistance do you see and what do you think is behind it?
Mm. There's a ton of concern right now about data privacy. I mean, I
Mhm.
think I get questions about that every other day at the very least. Who has my data? What are they doing with my data? Especially individuals that support communities that are under threat. Where are we storing data? How are we managing it? And then also, what does the platform itself keep? I get questions all the time around even should we be using Signal? Like, is everybody supposed to be on Signal or is everybody supposed to be on WhatsApp or like what's the new encryption technology? And encryption technology has actually not changed much in decades, but that's a lot of the fear that I'm getting and also what tools are better for protecting. You think you hear
Yeah.
every other week that there's a new data breach somewhere. Most of those data breaches, by the way, are because people are terrible with passwords. It's
I think I heard once I had someone who worked for me who was like very, very high tech person. Now he's like developing probably stuff for either video games or military. But I remember he shared with me like the number one cause of password breaches is people writing it down on pieces of paper where other people walk in and see. So when he tell us more about the real threat people should be worried about with security and passwords?
well, that's just it. Securing your passwords. I can't tell you how many times I come into an organization and I'm like, okay, let me have access to your systems. And they give me a spreadsheet that has
Mm.
all of their systems on it, all of their logins, and all of their passwords. And the passwords are also a combination of the organization's name, the year that they started the organization or the year they signed up for the tool, and like an exclamation mark, you know?
So if that's your password, go change it now.
And it's really easy to hack that. It's really common. You don't even have to hack it. You can just share this spreadsheet wildly, which is most organizations do, forget who has access to it, and then it's out there. And those passwords are never changed.
Yeah.
So organizations, it's the easiest, simplest way to improve security is to get something like a one pass, a LastPass, a Bitwarden, any of them. Securely store your passwords, change them regularly, and enable two-factor authentication when you can.
Yeah, so, so important. I am a longtime user of LastPass, which I know was hacked some years ago. I decided to ride through it. I was like, but nobody got my passwords and there's potentially a risk to switching, but I did start backing up. I realized in that moment, let me make sure my passwords are also kind
Mhm,
of stored in a secondary password manager just in case so that I have, access to change it over if I need to. But it just makes it so, so much easier
mhm,
to add team members and remove team members as well as more secure.
mhm,
And I actually just had so I use LastPass and my assistant Maureen, who's based in East Africa, and she got somebody like hacked her Facebook account, but I didn't have to worry about anything related to my business because I share through LastPass. She
mhm,
can't even see the passwords, so she can log in. And so nothing, I didn't even have to change passwords,
mhm,
except, we changed like her email account password just in case. But nothing is even saved on her computer to affect my business at all. So, real life example just happened 2
mhm.
weeks ago. So, yeah.
And those
Tell us
phishing
more.
emails, those phishing text messages are getting really, really good. I just got one the other day. We got a bill from EasyPass, driving around in Connecticut, New York, they get a lot of tolls. And so we had to pay the bill, but it came in the mail. I got a text message saying, "Hey, your
Mhm.
EasyPass bill is overdue." And I almost clicked it because I knew we had just paid it, so I was like, "Maybe the check got lost or maybe something happened," and then when I looked at the link again, I paused, and I realized this is not an EasyPass official link. This phone number has way too many numbers in it. The
Mhm.
moment you go to click on those things or double check it, a lot of stuff can be lost.
Yeah. So what do you recommend to people? Because I think that's a real security threat for folks. What do you recommend they do to avoid getting in trouble with that?
Well, I would just say give yourself grace. We all are moving super, super fast, doing a million different things. We see an email from a contact that we know we don't think to double check is the actual email, the correct one. We just see their name pop up, you know. So, one, it's going to happen to you and it's okay. That's the first thing that I want to tell you. And then the second thing is if you put some systems in place for when it does happen, then you don't have to mitigate so much damage, right? Changing
Yeah.
Don't have all of your passwords be the same password, right? Please change them up and do more than just like add an exclamation mark or say, "Oh, my password is hello, but I've changed the E to a 3." Everybody knows that, you know?
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
do some simple things like keeping your passwords up to date, changing them around, enabling two-factor authentication, because if someone gets your password, but they don't have your phone number for texting, then that's a way to prevent them from logging in. I dealt with someone stealing my identity, and unraveling that for years took a while, but one of the saving graces was I had two-factor authentication on most of my accounts, and so it was impossible for them to get into the big things like my bank account and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a good advice. And back to those password managers, now I use the free version of LastPass, but when I had a larger team that I managed when I ran a marketing agency, I had the enterprise version and I could control for each team member had their own LastPass account. And with one click of a button, I could force everybody to change all of their
Mhm,
passwords, set that they all have to be different, right? And then the password store also generates,
mhm,
really good, strong, unique passwords. So it doesn't have to be hard if you're using the right tools
right.
to make that change. So let's go back to just kind of thinking big picture for a moment. And I'm excited that, over the years, the concerns are like now like security. Are we using technology well? Because I remember when concerns and resistance was, I don't want to use a computer or like,
Mhm,
I don't want to use digital files. So it sounds like we're kind of evolved out of resisting personal use of technology to asking questions about, are we using the right technology? Have I captured that correctly? Or is
definitely. And I would say the pandemic is what pushed that shift forward, right? Once everybody became remote, there was the resistance to cloud-based technology, the resistance to putting stuff on global servers reduced by
yeah,
tenfold. The number of organizations, for instance, that I was talking to about accounting software. We do a lot of accounting software implementation and analysis. And the resistance to moving from QuickBooks Desktop to a cloud-based system before 2020 was really high, right? No one
yeah,
understood, why would I want to move to a cloud-based accounting system that isn't safe, right? I want my one computer that has QuickBooks on it.
right.
And then when everybody had to go remote and when no one could access the financial data and one person had to go into the office to log into QuickBooks to do everything, it became apparent that, oh, our work really has become cloud-based. Our work has become global, and we have a huge pressure to respond to that. So,
Right.
attitudes towards cloud-based technology have completely changed, especially, with organizations like Microsoft shifting to a complete cloud-based model as well, have
Yeah.
pushed that forward too.
Yeah, I think that I saw that too in the pandemic. I work with my clients remotely. I've been using Zoom for years before the pandemic, but I used to kind of have to have as a qualifying step for potential clients is if they can't get on a Zoom call with me, it's not going to work. And after once the pandemic started, like, yep, everybody knows Zoom. I no
Exactly.
longer have that issue. And the cloud thing too, as well, makes so much sense. So let me ask you, because so much of what we use technology for is communications, and so much of good operations as well as good fundraising is about how we communicate.
Mhm.
So maybe we could kind of divide our conversation is how do you encourage organizations to communicate internally with technology better? And then maybe we can talk about using technology to have better communications, building donor relationships.
Mm. So we have a process that we like to focus on, which is people, process, then products. right? So we are a value-centered, human-centered firm. So when we talk about technology, the first thing with any client is we talk about people, right? Who are the people in your organization? How do you communicate with them? Even a second, it's like, who is everybody, right? How are your values showing up in all of the individuals that are in your organization, right? We work at nonprofits. Probably not because we're trying to make money, because we're totally bought into the mission. We're excited to do good work. So for us, we want to focus on that first and foremost. And then also understand what is the technology literacy in an organization, because normally it varies. And I make no assumptions about tech literacy, age, gender identity or expression, background. It can be all over the place. So the more we get
Yeah.
to know the team and the more we understand who the organization is, we can then move to what are your processes or what do you want your processes to be? One reason we focus for people process is because a lot of times processes are built around products,
Right.
right?
And then your people don't like the processes.
Exactly, and it's like, well, we had to Salesforce isn't working exactly the way that we wanna do, so we had to create this extra process over here in this platform to then augment how we're doing this, and my question is, well, okay, how do you want to be communicating, right?
Yeah,
Let
yeah.
let's remove Salesforce from the conversation and just talk about each other.
I have a quick story to share about that. I briefly dated a guy who worked for a super techie company, and he led kind of like the sales and implementation team.
Mm,
Like um, they managed security certificates for like global corporations. It was very, very, very high tech.
yeah.
And I remember I was overhearing one of their calls. Their company used Salesforce, but how were they communicating as a sales team to figure out? They'd made a Google Doc and they were all just sharing their notes in their Google Doc. I was like, they could have used any tool. They're all very capable. But it was like, sometimes I think some tools are overbuilt and
Mhm,
we need to where they used to we used to need tools that were more structured
mhm,
because we didn't have such robust search engines or we didn't
mhm,
have tagging systems. But now we actually, I think, need less structure in some of our tools than we used to.
mhm.
And we just need quick, easy, human flowy communication, which is why for this super techie team, they're like Salesforce notes, no. Google Doc, yes.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget that moment. I think that kind of captures that, let's make the process easy for people.
Mhm,
I want to ask you, kind of going deeper into this people and processes piece, where do you see inequities and biases showing up related to people, processes, and products? And where do you think people need to be focusing on addressing those?
mm,
And I'll just say, I like to use, I mean, people love to talk about the positive, but I like to say, hey, it's the biases and the inequities we
mm.
need to be watching out for and nipping in the bud. So that's my language, but use whatever language you like.
No, I'm here for it. I appreciate it. And the biggest bias I see is around tech literacy. And that just a lot of people hold a lot of assumptions. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard the phrase, well, I need a 20 something to just do our social media.
Mm-hmm.
Why is the assumption that every 20 something out there is like an amazing social media guru and that's what they want to be doing, right? And there's just ageism as well. I've heard it at the other end of the
Yeah.
spectrum. Oh, well, there's a boomer on our team. They're not going to be able to use this new tool that we've decided on using. And so a lot of the assumptions that people have around an individual's tech literacy, I find is inaccurate and is unfair, right?
Mm.
And that some folks are really adept at learning new skills, but again, have to understand the why. If someone just walks in and says, "Hey, I'm going to teach you today how to fix a car engine." And you're like, "But why? Like what does that have to do with my job?" You're not going to
Right.
be excited about it.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and so that is where I see a lot of things come up. It's
Mhm.
it's around also language. Folks that especially work in environments where English isn't the first language of the entire staff, we forget how many euphemisms we use and
Mhm.
how much we'll try to explain something and we'll assume that someone else doesn't understand. but it's simply, we have to translate ourselves. And that's true with technology, right? Everything is
Yeah.
a different skill.
Absolutely. So true. And on the flip side, I'm just seeing my assistant in East Africa where, they learn multiple languages growing up. Most of them learn English because that's what high school is taught in English, but it's British, it's African, it's
Yeah.
kind of East Africanized British English. And a big kind of technological help for her in writing communications is I've trained ChatGPT to talk like me, and now she can use
Mhm.
ChatGPT to help her communicate with people in a way that's closer to kind of not just American English, but my style of
Mhm.
American English. And that's really allowed her to do a lot more than she was previously in communications. Do you see tools like that helping enable people in that way?
Yes, I do. And I think that there's a lot of talk right now around AI and the potential of AI, but the fears of AI. I would say N10, which is a nonprofit technology education and advocacy organization, they have an amazing guide around ethics of AI. I would highly recommend anybody go to N10's website. They have wonderful guides, especially when it comes to equity and technology. Talk about how you can think about AI and new tech from an equity lens, but also try to still innovate, right? I'm not here to
Yeah.
say don't use Chat GPT, but I am here to say think about what it means, think about who's using it, why they're using it, and where that data is going, right? And there's AI embedded in everything. Remember, AI is just large language models. So we've been using it for years. It's just now so much more in our face and it's embedded into a lot of products.
Yeah, I love that. And as I'm going to keep telling stories for our audience, but as I think about Maureen and my adaptation of her now using ChatGPT to and but we made a decision. So she uses it when she's writing communications that come more from me.
Mhm.
But we also reached a point where I was like, hey, I'm not going to pretend, that you aren't where you are, right? When you're just communicating as you, like just use your language,
Mhm.
right? Where I'm not going to ask you to pretend to be me or that you're somewhere that you aren't. You have a great background, you're a smart person, and we'll just be authentic and just be where it is. And if people, notice that your language usage is a little differently, it's just because, you're a smart, amazing woman who's, grown up and lived her whole life in Kenya. And, you're not from New York State. So that's just it. Let's just let it shine. We don't need to
Mhm.
kind of genericize everything. I think that's something people need to watch out for. So speaking of genericizing things, which is probably not a word at all, let's talk about communicating with donors, constituents, staff. How do you see technology helping those kind of operations and plans work better?
It was funny. I had a great conversation last night about how donor communications and the donor life cycle is changed. And there's a lot of resistance to that change, like throughout the sector.
So what's the change and what's the resistance?
Well, the donor pyramid, right, is false. I'm probably going to draw ire from some people when I say that. But
You're
the
safe here. I'm always saying things people don't agree with.
the idea is it's much more of a circle, right? And that someone who donates only $5 online could have a huge high net worth and a high capacity to give. You don't know. But because now we have this quick and easy way to donate money, I like to say all of our donors, right, are potential high net worth or, major donors. And so let's think about how we're communicating with them. One thing that I love for organizations to think about is their email marketing tool. These are powerful tools now. You can
Yeah.
segment, you can create drip campaigns, and you can create different drip campaigns based on your segmentation, but you have to have good data, right? You need to have your donor database be clean, have information about individuals, make sure you know more about what they're interested in, why they signed up, how they signed up. And although that seems like a huge task, There's actually data that you're collecting about these individuals already. It's just putting them in one space so that you can then create a communication strategy based on those individuals and have your technology work for you. Like I said,
Yeah.
it might take a minute to set up, okay, I'm going to do this particular campaign for all of my donors that are interested in cats, right? Say I'm an animal rights organization. And but this campaign for all of my donors that are interested in dogs, and then this one for everybody else that's like small animals. And as long as you can have those tags in the system and set that campaign up, there's not much more you have to do, and you can
Yeah.
do A/B testing and say, I'm going to try this email out on the cat people and see if it resonates with them. And if it does, maybe I can change some things up. There's so much fun you can do around personalizing communications to donors. And that's what's going to shift them from that $5 donation to that $5,000 donation.
Yeah. That's really, really key. And since I'm talking a lot about Maureen today, I'll just share. Last year, we decided, because I think in this, we can automate so much. And I'm a huge fan of automating things, but not everything. So one of the shifts we made last year is every day, every couple of days, Maureen goes into our email database and she takes every new person, manually pulls them up, Googles them, finds them on LinkedIn, sends a request if she finds them, and tags them manually. And it's like a little manual point in the process that allows us to have much richer data. We can really segment, and we didn't, so yes, could we, do things in an automated way to try to get people to self-identify in a way that the technology knows and auto tag them? Yeah, but it actually works really nicely to have that little bit of manual touch, and then we get really clean data right from the first moment, and it doesn't take really that much time to do for the results that it gets. So I think I'd love to ask you, like, where do you see people or advise people, like, take a step back from the automation in this world where so many things are automated and technified?
Well, we did a really fun data fidelity and data cleanliness project actually with one client who had a huge, they were an advocacy organization. So their donors were intermixed with their volunteers. And it was really hard for them to say, oh, we need all of these folks to show up for like this rally because they live in this neighborhood, but we can't find them in the system. And it was just sort of this downward spiral of like, data's messy. We're just going to add more messy data. We don't know what to do. And so we came in and said, let's pause just for a second. What do you want to be collecting? What are you collecting right now? What does everything mean in your system? And can we clean up some of these fields? Can we create a data dictionary also so that when folks come in, they know what everything means so that you can have clean
Right.
data? And then can we give you a roadmap towards cleanliness, right? Because do you want to pay a consultant, hundreds of dollars an hour to clean up your database? Probably not, right? But,
Right.
can you find someone to help clean up your database once you have the structure that you want it to be in? Yes, that's a much more feasible project. So, we're here to help you create that data strategy and then, like I said, move towards cleanliness. And it was so helpful. I mean, I still talk to them and they're like, we're still using the data dictionary. Like we're still, we reference it every day. We love it specifically because it's like, let's think about what we're trying to achieve. Again, as I was talking about earlier, what are our people? Who are our people? What are our processes? And then let's talk about the product, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
make sure that those two things are aligned before we then go to what's next.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you just hit on something, so often people think like, oh, we're going to hire a consultant to help us expand, to add this, to do this, to do. And really, for those of us who are come in as consultants, what really happens, feel free to disagree with me though, is that growth happens, mess happens with it. And then the consultant comes as the cleaner, right? They re-simplify, they help you distill what are the things that you added that you really need to keep and help you shed all the things you don't. And maybe they add something or they have a twist on how you're going to do it so you can do it even better. But I know so often the work is to simplify, because
Mhm.
the reality of growth is things, it's like a weed tumbling down a hill. It's picking up stuff, and you
Mhm.
need, people to come in and help kind of trim it back down to its essence. And I just went live today, and the whole point of my live today was doing less at one time helps you get more done. So
Mhm.
doing more and getting more done are not the same thing. And often it's streamlining, doing a little less,
Mhm.
that helps you get more done. Do you see that in your work with organizations?
100%. I mean, even if we were just to talk about like the database example, the number of times I've come in and someone created 5 fields for date, like, or notes. They're like, okay, well, I wanted to put their, program that they participated here, but it's a text field, and everybody has misspelled everything in a text field. I hate text fields. And then, there's another field that's like a drop down of the program that year that they participated in. So it ends up like 5 fields that all
Yeah,
carry a variant of the same data. And I'm like, well, can we consolidate this? What are we trying to achieve? And, if you're not using the information, maybe you don't have to collect it, right? And that's
right.
why I
Yeah.
also love technology strategy paired with like a theory of change exercise, because we can say,
Mhm.
what are our outcomes? What are we trying to achieve in our work? And if that piece of data doesn't help us achieve it, then we can jettison it. It's okay. I love being the person that can come in and say, it is okay to let this go. Because sometimes clients just need to hear that. Just need this.
They do. It's so true. You may let it go. I've even had clients and be like, "You may close your nonprofit. It is not a human. Nobody dies."
Yeah.
Right? You can end programming. You can let things go if they don't serve a purpose,
Hmm.
and it just makes room for, birth and new things to
Hmm.
come into place. I love that. Well, we're pretty much at time already, so I'd love to ask, what clients should be reaching out to you? Who do you love working with the most, and what kind of activities, and what's the best way for them to reach you?
Great. So, uh, I love clients that have questions around technology, data, systems, right? So even if it's as simple as I have a big technology tool that we need to re-implement and I don't know even where to start, or to I just don't know what's working, right? Like there are problems, but I can't identify it. Like we've done great tech strategy ecosystem work and very specific tool work. Or, like I said, someone that knows that their database just needs new eyes and needs a refresh. So, anyone that has technology, operations, questions, and it can connect to any part of your work from program management to donor communications to accounting and finance to inventory, right? We've kind of looked at it all. My website, we recently redid it, so the contact form works and everything it should be up to date. So it's www.aropaconsulting.com. That's AROPA. Or, I'm very active on LinkedIn, or you can shoot me an email. I love talking to people, even if you're thinking, oh, just like a 30-minute, is this even feasible? Am I on the right track? Happy to have those calls.
Yeah, I love that. And we'll have those links in the show notes. And I just want to kind of put in a plug for, if you have technology issues, working with someone like Roz, who really understands nonprofit operations and nonprofit strategy, is really, really important. And the fundraising piece, because I have seen a lot of people who really mostly understand and love tech,
Mhm.
but don't understand. They don't, even if they believe people first, they don't really understand the needs. I
Mhm.
have seen too many nonprofits get bad fit technology solutions. So whether you work with Roz or someone else, I really encourage you to choose someone who really has that strategy and operations background for nonprofits, so that you truly get something that works for your people and your ultimate goals that you're trying to achieve.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much, Roz. It's been such a pleasure. And thank you out there for listening and for everything that you do to make our communities better. I have a small favor to ask. If you would just take a moment to like and review this podcast, if you're listening somewhere where that's easy to do that, and share it with a friend or colleague who could benefit from conversations like these. And remember, nonprofits are more complex than for-profits. So the secret to winning that game of nonprofit whack-a-mole is to work smarter, not harder. Until next time, take care of yourself, and I wish you all the best.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.